May 29th, 1453. The date echoes through history as the death of an empire. We know the story of the last Roman emperor, Constantine XI, falling in battle, his body lost amidst the rubble of his conquered capital. But history, obsessed with the fall of kings, has largely forgotten the women who represented the empire's very soul. When Ottoman soldiers finished sacking Constantinople, they were not just looking for gold, they were hunting for a prize of far greater value: the royal princesses of the House of Palaiologos. But what is even more shocking than their capture is the disturbing precedent set nearly a century before the fall. In 1346, the Byzantine Emperor John VI Cantacuzene, desperate for military aid in a civil war, made an unprecedented and scandalous move. He offered his own daughter, Theodora, as a bride to the Ottoman Sultan Orhan. This was no grand alliance, it was a live transaction. At her wedding, the groom didn't even bother to show up. Theodora was the first of a new kind of pawn, a Byzantine princess sacrificed to buy a dying empire a little more time. So what was the actual price of their sacrifice? Did they live as prisoners? Or did some of them master the rules of their new world to become powerful players in a Muslim court? How did a childless princess become one of the most powerful women of the 15th century, secretly shaping the fate of millions of Christians? And what does the shocking story of a slave girl, who rose from the markets to shatter every rule of the harem, tell us about the brutal reality of this system? But to understand their fate, you must first understand the world they were forced into. So, what exactly was the harem? If you're picturing a wild party with dancing girls, you're dead wrong. In reality, think of it as the ultimate, ultra-exclusive gated community, but with one job: to run the Sultan's private household and produce the next heir to the throne. It was home to the Sultan, his mother, his wives, his children, and hundreds of other women and their servants. No man could enter except the Sultan and his most trusted eunuchs. And this place had a strict corporate hierarchy. At the very top was the CEO, the Sultan's mother. She wasn't just a respected elder. She was one of the most powerful political figures in the entire empire, with her own court, vast wealth, and immense influence over her son. Right below her was the Sultan's main favorite, and the mother of his eldest sons. Her entire life was a high-stakes bet on her son becoming the next Sultan. And then came everyone else: other concubines, servants, cooks, and musicians, all women. For a new arrival, whether a captured princess or a purchased slave, this was her new universe. Her entire life depended on navigating alliances, earning favor, and, most crucially, bearing a son. The rigid hierarchy of the harem makes it easy to view the Ottomans as purely brutal conquerors. But it's not 100% true. What we are about to tell you is not a legend. It is a story documented in diplomatic correspondence, state archives, and the chronicles of both the Ottoman Empire and its European rivals. It is the story of a princess who broke every single rule. Mara Branković, daughter of the Serbian ruler Hürrem Branković, was sent to the Ottoman court as a political bride for Sultan Murad II in 1435. She entered the harem with the title of a legal wife, a status far above that of a concubine. However, the first shocking detail that set her destiny apart was that she never bore the Sultan any children. In a system built on motherhood, to be childless was typically a one-way ticket to obscurity. Yet, when Murad II died, the opposite happened. His son, the legendary conqueror Mehmed II, did not cast her aside. Instead, he did something extraordinary. He called her Mother. Mehmed II, the man who would shatter the Byzantine world by conquering Constantinople, honored Mara as his Valide Hatun, essentially granting her the status and privileges of the Queen Mother. He allowed her to retain her Orthodox Christian faith, provided her with a generous income, and even gifted her vast estates in Macedonia, where she ruled like a sovereign. This is where her power truly blossomed. From her estate, Mara became a critical diplomatic channel between East and West. Venetian and Ragusan ambassadors specifically sought her out to carry their messages to the Sultan. The Pope himself wrote to her, hoping she could influence Mehmed. But her most stunning moment came in 1451, when the last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI, desperate for an alliance, proposed marriage to her. Think about that. The last emperor of Constantinople asked a former Ottoman wife to become his empress and help save Christendom. And Mara, with a political foresight that few possessed, refused. She understood that Constantinople was doomed, and her power lay not in becoming a Byzantine empress, but in remaining a trusted advisor to the most powerful man in the world. From her unique position, she became the protectress of Christians under Ottoman rule. But just a generation later, a very different woman shattered the harem's rules entirely through a revolutionary and controversial love story. Her name was Hürrem Sultan, though the West would call her Roxolana. Captured as a teenage girl from Ruthenia, she arrived in the Constantinople slave market not as a princess, but as property. Yet she achieved what no woman had before. First, she captivated the heart of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, becoming his undeniable favorite. But she went far beyond that. She broke the one mother, one son policy by bearing Suleiman's 5 sons, tying him to her exclusively. Then she achieved the unthinkable. She persuaded Suleiman to legally marry her. This was an event without precedent in the Ottoman dynasty for nearly 2 centuries. A slave became the Sultan's sworn wife. From this position, she wielded power openly, corresponding with the King of Poland and the Shah of Persia, and exerting influence on international politics. But her influence had a dark side. To secure the future for her own sons, she orchestrated the execution of Suleiman's brilliant, long-serving Grand Vizier, Ibrahim Pasha, and his own powerful firstborn son, Mustafa. Well, her life marks the true beginning of the Sultanate of women, proving that in the Ottoman court, the greatest power could be forged not by birthright, but by intellect, ambition, and an unbreakable bond with the most powerful man in the empire. Let me tell you about 2 more women who followed in her footsteps. Kösem Sultan was perhaps the most politically powerful woman in Ottoman history. She entered the harem as a slave concubine, and her life story reads like an epic. She became the favorite of Sultan Ahmed I and the mother of multiple sons. But her true dominance came later, as the Sultan's mother, who acted as regent for not 1, but 2 of her young sons, Murad IV and Ibrahim. For years, she effectively ruled the empire, presiding over imperial council meetings from behind a screen. Her influence was so vast that she was known as the real ruler of the Ottoman Empire. Her life ended in a brutal assassination, a stark reminder that the power she wielded was always perilous. Then there was Hürrem Sultan, the mother of Mehmed IV. She famously wrestled control from her powerful mother-in-law, Kösem, in a deadly struggle that decided the empire's fate. We've seen the incredible stories of women who became queens of the empire from inside the harem. But this makes us ask the real dark question. What happened to the ordinary women? The ones the Sultan never noticed, the ones who didn't have a famous love story, or the ones who were just captured in war? The truth is, their lives were often very different, and much, much harder. At the apex of this society was the Valide Sultan, the mother of the reigning sultan, who wielded immense political power and managed the entire harem. Just below her were the concubines, or Haseki sultans, the sultan's chief consorts and mothers of his children, who held the status of a legal wife and enjoyed significant privileges. Then came the Iqbals, women who were recognized consorts of the sultan, but had not yet borne male children. At the bottom of the hierarchy were the Guzda and Carriers, enslaved women who served as servants and attendants to the ladies of the court, with little to no interaction with the sultan himself. Most women entered this system through slave markets, where young girls taken from the Caucasus, Eastern Europe, and the Balkans were examined and valued like possessions. Those considered promising were given new names, converted to Islam, and placed under strict training. They learned manners, music, poetry, fine embroidery, and the arts of charm and grace, all intended to prepare them for the possibility of catching the Sultan's attention. The life of an ordinary odalisque, or servant, was one of domestic labor. They worked as laundresses, cooks, or maids. For a concubine who managed to spend a night with the Sultan but failed to bear a child, the future was one of political irrelevance, often remaining in the harem as her youth faded. Others could be married off to high-ranking officials as a reward, a transaction that simply moved them from one form of servitude to another. The ultimate goal for any woman in the harem was to bear a son, as this was the only guaranteed path to security and influence. So what do you think? Were these women prisoners, or were they pioneers? Were the gilded halls of the harem a cage, or a stage for some of history's most brilliant political minds? Their legacy forces us to ask, who truly holds power? Is it the conqueror who takes a throne, or the woman who learns to rule the conqueror? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Until next time.